Hello, everybody. We're about to start. Welcome to the session of how to build customer loyalty for your agritourism destination. And this session is going to be recorded. I'm Penny Weff. I'm going to be moderating, and which just means introducing and walking around with the mic doing questions later. And you all should know that in addition to being recorded, we have participants online. So we have virtual participants coming from all over the world who are joining us. And they might be asking some questions later also. So welcome everybody in person and virtual. So that's all the notes I have to tell you. I would like to introduce your speaker today. Kate Cartwright is the Tasting Room and Wine Club Manager of Shelburne Vineyard in Shelburne, Vermont. So here is Kate.
It's Shelburne. That's okay. We get all kinds of pronunciations, but it is Shelburne. S-H-E-L-B-U-R-N-E. It's a town just 20 minutes south of here, so I did not have to travel far this morning, and thank you to everyone who did. Are we good? Thank you. I'm tall. So yeah, like Penny said, I'm the Tasting Room and Wine Club Manager. I've been at Shelburne Vineyard for 3 years now, the happiest years of my working life. Hope to be there a long time. And I'll just tell you a little bit first about Shelburne Vineyard. So we are, at this point, Vermont's oldest continuously operating vineyard. I'd say I'm tied with one of the other ones that's also been around for about 22 years. So we were founded back in 1998 by this wonderful couple, Ken and Gail Albert, who are still actively involved, Ken especially, as the majority owner of the vineyard today. He started planting some grapes in Vermont when no one, well, very few people were trying to make wine in Vermont. A lot of the varieties that we all are more familiar with, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, these Vitis vinifera varieties that grow throughout the rest of the world in wine growing regions, they are way too delicate for Vermont's very cold winters. They just can't survive. And so he found out about grapes that were being developed at the University of Minnesota, University of Wisconsin, New Cornell, and New York State that are hybrid grapes. So hybrid in this case, not meaning they run on electricity, but they are crosses between wild native North American grape varieties in the Vitis riparia and Vitis labrusca families primarily, that don't make very good wine, you know, Concord grape wine. You don't want to really drink that, but the vines can survive the cold and they can ripen in a short growing season, and they are naturally pretty disease resistant to molds and mildews and other problems. We have long cold winters and also short but hot and humid summers, so lots of disease pressure. These hybrid varieties are what we grow, 99% of what we grow now. We have a little bit of Riesling, which is difficult to farm here. The rest of them are grapes like Marquette, La Crescent, Louise Swenson. You've never heard of them if you're not from Vermont or Montana or Iowa or Wisconsin or Minnesota. So we are very lucky to now have 22 acres of vines that we farm. Most of our wine we make from the grapes that we grow ourselves. And we do make 2 or 3 wines that we get the juice from New York State, from the Finger Lakes. So it was a retirement project for Ken and Gail. Ken had been an IBM engineer for 33 years. And that, I won't tell you how old he is now, but he's in his 80s. So he's been doing Shelburne Vineyard as his retirement project, gone very badly. And now we have 6 full-time employees, about 20 to 25 part-time employees, primarily in our busy season. We bring them on from May to the end of October, and then we're quite a bit quieter through the winter. We are in an ideal tourist location. We're very, very blessed to be on a major road called Route 7, or Shelburne Road, runs straight down from Burlington, where we are now, to our vineyard. We are surrounded by some of our vines. We have our winery and tasting room right there. If people don't know that we're there, they often just see us as they drive by. We are very reliant on tourism, but then also on our local community. So that's a little bit more of what I'm going to talk about today. So this is about what we promise, right? So we craft both classic and modern wines for people who want to connect with their wine grower, support agricultural preservation in Vermont, very important, a lot of what we talk about, and appreciate a taste of place never before imagined. Meaning you've never heard of these grapes, but you're going to walk out of here thinking, wow, Vermont wine is like really good. I had no idea they're making really good wine here. And it tastes unique, it is unique. So in order to do that, what we want to do is guide, educate, engage, and lead people to discover what Vermont wine offers. We are huge proponents of not only our own vineyard and winery, it's about so much more. So we're very active in the Grape and Wine Council. Ken is one of the founding members of the Vermont Grape and Wine Council. And we have just a lot of community engagement. We're very blessed to have a very active Vermont Tourism Council that we rely on, the Ag Department, Hello Burlington, they're great. And Tara, who was here before, but with Dig In Vermont, and they really support agritourism in general across the state, and wineries in particular, they're a great resource. Oh yeah, so this is me. I was in a very different field before getting into wine. I spent 15 years as a marketing communications manager for healthcare IT companies. A big one in Burlington is what they brought me to Vermont 23 years ago when I was 23, so don't do the math. But I did not expect to stay in Vermont. I'm Canadian, I'm from Ontario, so that's my international portion. And I am still proudly Canadian, but I'm a Vermonter. I'm not allowed to call myself that. You have to be a third generation Vermonter to say you're a Vermonter, but I'm still a Flatlander. I can't ski. But I've lived here for 23 years and I love this place. I fell in love with the state, with the people, with the place. And I luckily found my way out of working for GE Healthcare, sorry, GE, and being a healthcare IT manager, marketing manager, to working in the beverage industry, selling wine in Vermont for 5 years as a retail wine buyer and salesperson. And now I get to manage this tasting room and live and work, not live, well, 60 hours a week. I'm living at the vineyard and I'm learning to make wine. And that is an incredible opportunity. So that's what I want to do eventually. I'm learning about the farming, the pruning, the winemaking, and one day I won't be managing the tasting room. So come back. Whoa, geez. These are some of the wines that we make, and I apologize to those of you who are online and you probably can't see this, maybe in the recording, I'm not sure, but so we make a line of wines called Iapetus. These are newer, we've been making them for about 6 years now, and they are very reflective of the place and the grapes. It's primarily organic farming, at the very least sustainable, using a system called integrated pest management, which minimizes any pesticide or herbicide or fungicide use. And then we've converted 2 of the vineyards over to entirely organic practices. And then it's wild yeast fermentation, so we don't add yeast. It's a spontaneous fermentation like wine always used to be made before we figured out what yeast could do, and they're unfiltered wines. So these are much more, the natural wine category. And we sell both brands, the Shelburne Vineyard Classic brand and Iapetus, pretty equally. But to me, these are kind of where we're going for the future. A newer demographic, a younger demographic of wine drinkers looking for wines like this. This is our classic Shelburne Vineyard, Marquette. Marquette is really the key red grape variety that has started to put cold climate wine growing on the map. We feel we make a really good one. So if you're in town for a little while, we're open 7 days a week, 20 minutes away. And this is one of our newer wine growers. So his name is CJ Buzzy. He's worked at the vineyard for 7 years. And we also really encourage, no, I'm not the only one. Our other employees, if they want to try to make their own wine and have their own kind of sub-brand, they have that opportunity. So this is his very first vintage. I think that's just really, really cool and part of our story. This was last year's harvest. It's one of my favorite grapes called La Crescent. So let's get down to the business of what you want to learn today about building customer loyalty for an agritourism destination. So it's absolutely essential that when someone walks in the doors of your location, your farm, wherever it is, in our case, a winery tasting room, that we are not just saying, hey, do you want to do a wine tasting? Here's some wine, buy a bottle, off you go, we'll never see you again. We want to link them to our working landscape, tell them about why we make what we make, we grow what we grow, and how we make the wine, and why it tastes so good and what's different about what we're doing. So we're all about educating them, engaging with them, and meeting them where they're at, because there are people who, we certainly are a location where folks will come for their bachelorette party, their bridal shower. We have private events. I'll talk about that a little bit more. And they just want to have a good time with their family and drink some nice wine. And they just ask for your dry white or your dry red or your sweet wine. And that's awesome. And they start to think of you, it is all part of it, because they're like, I had a really good time there. I'm going to bring my next group of folks, will go to the vineyard. But if they want to know, they ask you questions, make sure you have the answers, right? So I'll talk about that more. So it's about the opportunity to turn the casual visitor, the tourist driving by your location, or who just was like, I want something to do in the area, I guess I'll go to a winery, into longtime loyal fans. You can't afford to ignore that opportunity. So I'm going to talk about the strategies and tactics that we employ at Shelburne Vineyard to provide much more than wine tastings. So it's about, like I said before, educating, engaging, championing the Vermont wine region, and creating a community to become part of the fabric of our customers' lives. So that's the 4 kind of pillars, and you'll see them referenced on each of the slides as I go along. So, it's covered up a little bit, but this is staff training techniques. So this speaks to the opportunity to educate, engage, and champion your region where you are. I think of every one of our staff members as an ambassador. They're not just college students who are there to bartend and sling some wine. They have to be passionate. You know, when I interview people, that's a key thing that, of course, it's hard to measure, right? But you have instincts that you develop for, is this person like, oh, I guess wine's fine, I don't really drink it. That doesn't mean they can't sell wine. If they're a cider, someone who appreciates cider or beer, any fermented product, they can get into wine, they can learn about it and be able to speak to it with that and convey that passion that we're looking to communicate to our customers. But they have to be enthusiastic and intelligent folks, right? It's not just a bartending job, like I said. So when we onboard our staff, I take a couple of weeks. I start hiring for the busy season, posting on Indeed.com, which is, at least in the US, I find to be a very good source of getting good resumes, good applications. And everyone has said, at least around here, I don't know if this is true in your state or country, but like, I can't find staff this year. I know staffing is a huge challenge in the hospitality industry. I don't know why, but I've been very lucky. We had no trouble staffing up. I almost have too many staff. It hasn't been as busy this year as we were during COVID. Like the world is upside down. And we had so many people last year. We were absolutely flooded. We changed up our whole business model, switched from just people crowding around the tasting bar when they came in to do a quick tasting to seated table service with a reservation. It was required as part of the governor's emergency order when we reopened restaurants and tasting bars. So that worked so well for us and actually generated far more revenue per person and overall, and way more tips for our staff as well, that we kept it. So people love working at the vineyard. It's a really fun place to be, and I haven't had any trouble with that, luckily. So I take about, like I said, 2 weeks, multiple shifts that people are learning the ropes, all of your basics about operations. But we do a pretty deep dive with each person into the history of the vineyard. People want to know, when were you founded? How long have you been around here? When did you plant your first grapes? And we talk about our place in the Vermont wine growing community as pioneers of Vermont wine. That's one of those key things that we, in our sort of mission and vision and positioning statements that we developed, want to keep hammering home in subtle and not subtle ways. Those are words we want our staff to use when they talk to customers. Shelburne Vineyard is really one of the pioneers of Vermont wine, and we're also crafting classic and modern wines for the future. Let me tell you about our Iapetus wines. So they have to learn, of course, about the varieties, which is going to be all new to many of these folks. Where do we grow them? Our vineyards themselves, we have 4 of them, 22 acres of vines, like I said. The furthest away is about 20 minutes south of where we make the wine. And they need to learn about our farming. Our people don't really know a lot, most visitors when they come, about how important soil health is to grapevine health and to the quality of your wine eventually. And we are really blessed. It's not that common, at least in the US, for the the vineyard manager or the wine grower, the farmer, to be the person or the people also making the wine. So we explain what that means and why we are therefore so much more connected, or we are, just because you have to buy grapes in some parts of the world and the country doesn't mean that you're not a good winemaker making good wine. But it's even cooler to be the person out there pruning through the winter storms, farming the vines and tending to them all summer long, getting to know them almost as individuals over the years. Our head wine grower has been with us for 17 years. So he planted many of these grapes that are now 16, 17 years old. And then you tend to the wine all throughout the fall after harvest and the barrel aging process, and you bottle it in the spring and the summer. And so they're intimately connected at every step. So we want our customers to get to learn that part of our story. Staff needs to be able to explain what that means, our regenerative and biodynamic farming practices that we're starting to employ, and why that's important. And then the winemaking aspects themselves. We do tours, which I'll talk about in a second, and it can get really technical, right? Winemaking is a complex process, but you can simplify it as well. So our staff need to know as much as possible about the winemaking. And then tasting notes on the wine, right? How long was this aged? What are the grapes? But what does it taste like? What am I going to experience? And if I talk to a customer who says, I want your Chardonnay, where's your Sauvignon Blanc? We don't make those, we can't grow those in Vermont, but try this. Every staff member needs to know which wine to direct people to based on the preferences that they find out that customer has. And then we hold all hands staff training events 1 to 2 times per season. That's about reiterating concepts that maybe are getting a little bit lost, training them, of course, on procedures that I'm seeing not being followed potentially, and team building, right? We have to be a really good, amazing, close-knit team in our tasting room. It is freaking fast-paced. I don't know how many of you are in like hospitality and restaurant management, but because we have a reservation management system called Resi, widely used throughout the US, I can see how many people came to our place in a day. Last year, our high in terms of covers, which is a person, was like 248 in a day. A lot of restaurants turn way higher volume than that, but we have 36 tables, mostly 4 tops, seating 4 people, plus a bunch of picnic tables and whatnot. But that's a lot of people. And so if you have 5 or 6 staff working there, hustling all day, and it better be pretty seamless. You can't trip over each other and break too many glasses. And then if people want to dig even deeper, or they need an answer to a question that they don't recall, and I'm not there, or my assistant tasting room manager isn't there, we have printed FAQs in all of our staff binders that they can reference about the vineyards, the grapes, the history, etc. Okay, whoops, wrong button. So like I said, we do free tours. Well, I didn't say they were free, but they are. So these are guided tours, not like something you have to read a booklet yourself. It's a staff member taking you, whether it's just yourself, your family, and then we do large group tours as well. Not usually by reservation, except for the really large bus tours. So it's ad hoc, on demand. If someone says, could we get a tour? Absolutely, we'd love to. We tend to advise folks. We recommend that they do the tour after they've experienced the wine tasting. We want them to be seated and relax, and then connect what they just tasted and what their favorite was. We can talk about that and how that wine is made when we go and look in the winery and go out to the vineyard. So it takes about 20 minutes, unless I'm doing it, because I love to tell people about the wine. And if they're really engaged, I'll spend 40 minutes with the customers, but hopefully they buy them some wine on their way out and they come back. So I did develop a script that's quite detailed. I tried to make it in my own words. And then staff were trained on that script. So I took them around, they all had a copy. I spoke to them as if I was giving them the tour, that they were customers, but then I want them to internalize that, make it their own. It can't be rote, right? People know when you're just basically a recording, a robot spitting out your memorized script. They glaze over, they lose interest, and they're not going to feel like they had a really great experience. So they need to say it in their own words, shorten it if they need to, it's fine. And so we'll do a couple of an employee going around with me, but with a customer. I'm like, do you want to take this one? You ready? And I'll just stay in the background and then give them some tips afterwards if there are any areas to improve. or things they say incorrectly. So I said that part already. So yeah, we do large tour groups. It used to be a lot more of our model. As I said, we're on this like main thoroughfare, and fall foliage season in Vermont is a major tourist thing, which is great. We love them. So we used to have a lot more really big bus tour groups coming through, and they tended to be seniors. It would be 50 to 60 people. That's fairly unmanageable with our current model of more like seated table service. Can't really fit all those people in and give them a good experience. So I've said no, which is hard, right, to business. But they were priced quite a bit lower because they wanted like volume discounts. So I've said, listen, if you're doing, there's a tour group, they provide culinary tours. So people who are more interested in Vermont wine, for example, it's called Rhodes Scholar, or Sugar Tours is another one operating in the New England area. And they're groups of 25, 30 people max. That we can manage. And they're great. They're always really interested, engaged, wonderful people from all over the country, sometimes all around the world. We have our own process with them. We divide them in two. Half of them do the wine tasting. We pour for them instead of on tasting flights like we do for normal service. And then the other half does the tour and we flip. And those are booked way in advance, right? So we're always prepared on those days with extra staff, et cetera. Did I do that? Yeah. Private educational tasting. So this is something I think that agritourism businesses, wherever possible, I encourage you to develop your own flavor of what this could be. So you may be open to the public and provide, like, you know, anybody who walks in can get a tour at your place now, but this makes people feel really special. So what we do is we have this listed on our website. People can reach out and book these. It has to be 2 weeks in advance, although I'll try to fit people in, of course, if they book a little bit short, a couple days before. I'm like, sure, I'll do one for you. So it's typically smaller groups, couples, 2 to 4 people. I've done them for up to 5 or 6 people, but it gets a little logistically challenging, because what I do is spend really dedicated time with that group, with those people, for up to 2 hours, sometimes more. I probably underprice it a little bit, honestly, for what we end up kind of giving them, but I love it and they love it. And it's really, I think, has value beyond the monetary aspect. So we charge $75 per person, and that gets them a wine tasting flight of 4 wines, which normally we charge $13 to $15 for that exact same amount of wine. And then a custom built cheese and charcuterie board. So we're not a full restaurant, but we do have, every day we have a menu that people can choose from, a la carte. We have Vermont cheeses, always a selection of them, cured meats, crackers, chips, preserves, that kind of stuff. And so I hand the customers, when they arrive for their private educational tasting, I know their wine preferences. We talk about it over email, usually in advance. So we talk a little bit about the specific wines they're going to be tasting. I make them their tasting flight, talk about the first 2 wines, and then I have them select from our food menu which 2 cheeses, 2 cured meats, 2 crackers, chips, and 2 preserves they would like to have. I go and make that board for them, bring it back, and we talk about pairing technique, why this wine goes with this food. People are really curious about that. So whatever version of that would work for your business, I think it's really cool to explore educating folks in depth about the product you make, but also things that aren't necessarily about making wine, but that they want to learn. Why do I pair fatty food with acidic or dry tannic wines? And they're like, the light bulb goes on. They're like, oh, I really do taste more blackcurrant all of a sudden, or the cheese tastes mushrooming now. And it teaches them like mindfulness, and not that it's not just about getting wasted, right? And then we do a tour. So this is, you know, it's essentially the same script as I use for any tour, but a bit, because it's a smaller group of just a couple people, we will really, it's more Q&A based. I take it where they want to go and speak to their interest level. If they're more interested in the farming and the pruning and the grapes themselves, we'll spend more time in the vineyard. If they want to know about punch downs and pump overs and wild yeast fermentation versus pitched yeast, we'll spend more time in the winery. And people love barrels, right? Have you ever been to a winery with beautiful barrels. I forget how cool they are because I get to see them every day, but people are like, whoa, it's wood. And we make sure to incorporate, I'm always talking about our place in the Vermont winemaking community, and positioning us as a leader, talking about our history, how much wine we make. People love those kinds of stats, right? You always want to work those in. We make 4,500 cases of wine in a good year. Best vintage ever was 2012. That kind of thing are fun things for little nuggets that people want to know. Oops, button no longer working. Any chance you can advance for me? It decided not to. Maybe. Oh, there's more. Yes, no, this is good. So yeah, at least 90 minutes, closer to 2 hours typically. And the 75 per person is not including tax and tips. So it's a nice little 20% automatic gratuity. You have to make a reservation. We have them advertised on our website. Occasionally we'll put up an Instagram post about like, did you know we provide these? I get a lot of these. So we do in the busy season, like at least one, usually 2 educational tasting sessions per week. I have to have a little more staff on because I'm off the floor, basically being with these people during that time, so we have to plan for it. Wine club. So this is, I manage the tasting room. That is an ongoing, everyday, all the time job. But wine club, it peaks once a quarter. We do quarterly wine club releases. It is a big, big part of my job because it's not just about the wine club releases. It's about the ongoing relationships with those wine club members, many of whom are local, of course, and who come in for their benefits, which I'll talk about. So we do a quarterly selection of 3, 6, or 12 bottles of wine in our case, and it could be 3, 6, or 12 packages of fruit or meat, whatever. And every one of those wine club members gets 15% off all bottles all the time. So not just the quarterly selection at whatever level they've signed up for. We call it the barrel thieves, kind of a lame name, but it works. Sorry. And so people who are barrel thieves are either single, double, or triple barrel members, 3 bottles, 6 bottles, or 12 bottles. So no matter which level they choose, they get 15% off those wines. And then they get a free wine tasting or a free glass of wine for themselves and a guest every time they come to the vineyard. So you think about that, you're like, you're giving a lot away, right? But only a certain percentage of folks who are wine club members actually are either local or visit on a regular basis. A large percentage of our members are out of state. We ship to 40 states. We use a system shipping management platform called Vino Shipper that allows us to ship alcohol to 40 states. And so they could be in California, Texas. They may not come and take advantage of their free wine tasting or a glass of wine very often, but they're still a recurring revenue source to us, right? And they share the wines that they get from Shelburne Vineyard and Iapetus with their friends in that state who might come and visit later. That's hard to measure, but I'm sure it happens. There's no membership fee, no like upfront fee to be a member. That's pretty typical of wine clubs. You're just paying for access to the wines and the benefits and saying that you commit to buying these wines on a regular basis during the releases. We do let people cancel. People will go on hold for a bit, but we're always gaining new members. So it's grown quite a bit since I started working at the vineyard 3 years ago. We're at around 350 members now. So that's a growth of over 100 members in the last 3 years. And really most of that actually came during COVID. It was incredible, partially because of my amazing staff, I have to say, but we were signing people up left and right last summer. It's really cool. And staff get a little bonus when they sign up, the wine club members. So there's a bit of an incentive depending on whether they sign up the 3, 6, or 12 bottle per quarter member. They get 10 to 20 bucks in their next paycheck. I have to say, I really, truly love our wine club members. I've done everything I can to, get to know them, memorize their names, their faces. I'm terrible with faces, good with names. But I'm like, oh yeah, I remember billing Daisy Sosa every quarter for the last 3 years. Hi, Daisy. And many of them really have become like family. They're part of they come to the vineyard because it feels like home to them. There are members who come and take advantage of their free tasting or glass more than once a week, a few times a week. They bring their kids. I hang out with them outside of work. We go to brunch. And it's really beautiful and amazing. It's not just transactional. It's about community. But at the end of the day, We are a seasonal business. Like I said, our busy season is about the beginning, middle of May through the end of October. It drops off a cliff in Vermont stick season. In November, we're not near the ski resorts. We get little bumps at the holidays, but then like January, February are our planning season because we might have 3 customers walk in and some midweek days. But then we do a wine club release in the middle of January and suddenly we have $23,000 in the bank, thank God, right? So reliable recurring revenue is a really good reason to do a club. Cellar tasting. So this is a really fun event. We started doing, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, a little before my time. We couldn't do it during COVID, but we did do it this previous winter. So this is another thing that we do to bring in revenue in several ways in our slow season when we have time and there isn't a lot else going on. So it's usually local folks, some folks who will come from a couple of surrounding states. And they are going to hear directly from Ken, our owner, and from our 4 wine growers. So people love to obviously connect. I'm just the tasting room manager. I make a little wine, but I'm not the winemaker. They want to hear from those folks. That's really special. And so they get access by purchasing a ticket to this event to hear from the wine growers about unreleased wines and taste those wines, basically not straight from the tanker barrel. We're not pouring into their mouths, but we do take the samples earlier in the day and then have those all portioned out and ready for those customers. We keep it limited. So we do 2 sessions. It's after hours. So it's an evening thing. First session is 26 people, second session, 26 people. So around fewer than 60 people in total. And it's I don't know if I put the ticket price, but I think we did $70 this past year. We've increased it a bit because we're giving a lot away. But a lot of the benefit is, whoops. I guess I didn't say it on here, but oh yeah, we do pre-order sales of those unreleased wines. So we're not only getting money from the ticket sales, but we're saying, did you love what you just tasted? You're a little tipsy. Here's an order sheet. Sorry. I didn't say that. And so then they pay then. It's not like, oh, in 3 months, we're going to remind you, you said you like this. And they're like, I don't think I want to get it. So you ordered 10 bottles of wine. We're going to ring you up right now. Do you want to join the wine club and get 15% off? And then when those wines are ready, we notify them, they come pick them up. And that could be literally like 6 months from them after they finish their barrel aging, et cetera. So yeah, that's a fun way to generate excitement and a feeling of connection to the people who grow and make their wine. Public concert series. So we've really stepped this up this year. For many years, the Vineyard has run a first Thursday concert that's free, and it's a fundraising event for a local charitable organization that we pick with the artist, the band that's playing at them. So we've done that for years. We've done bluegrass and barbecue on the 3rd Friday of every month from May to September. Bluegrass band comes out. We have barbecue food trucks, et cetera. And those are awesome. This year, we've, like I said, stepped it up. So we have a new marketing and events manager. Not me, thank God I don't have to do all that. 5 minutes? Oh my God, okay, we got it. And well, 5 minutes before questions. So he is a musician and very connected with the local musical community, also managed a world music label for several years. And so he's been able to bring in acts from, African bands, people who are Cuban, Caribbean, Latino music, which is amazing. And then like classical music, jazz, rock, surf punk, I think was the one last Saturday. And people are loving it. So we have occasionally continued to do free shows or ones that are fundraisers for local charities, but we've also started doing more that are ticketed. During COVID, when we did 2 bluegrass and barbecues, we couldn't do them for quite some time, but we did reopen for concerts late last fall. And we felt pretty nervous about it. We'd never charged a ticket for that before or limited attendance, and we would have up to 600 people, which is a lot on our property. And so since then, we've limited attendance by ticketing and capping it and selling out at $5 a ticket, but we sell out every time at about 275 tickets. And then we've had concerts that we charge up to $20 for more well-known acts. And these are family-friendly events. Kids are free. We have a fun place they can run around and be safe and, go run around in the vines and eat some grapes and stuff like that. Not choke on them, hopefully. Just a little more about the public concert series. This was one of the best ones we had. This was the first Bluegrass and Barbecue we had when we restarted them last fall, and it was so special. It was like, I literally cried. Everyone was so happy to come out and dance with their friends and family and neighbors. Like I said, we have food trucks, and that's huge because we want to support those other local farmers and their businesses, the restaurants, the chefs, and people love their food. And we also offer beer during those events. We don't usually, we make, wine and cider, and we want to promote those, but we are lucky to have Fiddlehead Brewing right across the street from us. And so we bring in their beer for the public concert events. So beer drinkers who don't maybe want wine or beer, or excuse me, cider, can grab a beer. So generates revenue, buzz about Shelburne Vineyard does a concert series. Cool, bring everybody, go to the next one. Okay. I have 2 minutes here. So everyone knows what social media is. This is more marketing than building necessarily customer loyalty per se. But I just want to, as a former marketer, I can't ever leave that part of my life behind, right? I just want to encourage folks to, if you're not already doing this, it's so simple. If you don't have a mission, vision, positioning statement, it's not easy to create, but you really need to do it, and then use it. Don't just put it in a PowerPoint with the guy who helped you develop it, or agency. Actually put it out there in your marketing materials and reinforce it in every channel. So on Facebook, on Instagram, on our website, obviously, we're using that language. We craft both classic and modern wines for people who want to connect to their wine grower, et cetera, et cetera. It may be subconscious, right, for people who are visiting those sites, but then they see it again and hear it again when they visit you. And eventually they think those things about your business. That's how branding kind of works. Use the highlights at the top of Instagram, simple little thing that I find a lot of people don't do, but that's perpetual evergreen content, real estate, where you can continue adding just photos or things that you've put up in your stories to your highlights. You can change them as much as you want, but it's something that when people are first finding out about you, checking out your Instagram, you can store a lot of stuff there that they don't have to scroll through your whole feed for. Reply to all your customer reviews, Google, Yelp, Expedia, whatever it is, promptly and personally. I always try to use the person's name in the response. It's not just thanks for visiting as a robo reply. It's thank you so much, Kate. These are the things we hope to provide. We're so glad you had a great time. Hope you can come back again soon. If someone has a concern, says something negative, address it up front, and ask them to email you if they'd like to discuss it more. Community giving, super important. We do 10% of profits from every first Thursday concert. We regularly donate gift cards to our local organizations. Lots of people approach us about that. And we're yes, absolutely. We track it. We get our tax benefit from that. But those people we can't give away wine. It's illegal, right? But we can give them, we can donate a $30 gift card for 2 wine tastings, gets, auctioned off at the local school's fundraising event, or a library or a healthcare organization, whatever it is. We try to focus on the arts, agriculture, diversity, education, and medicine. And so then they're yeah, Shelburne Vineyard is supporting this organization that I care about personally, and now I'm going to come and have a wine tasting and maybe buy some wine. And then we do this big annual harvest festival in November. I won't go into a ton of detail, but it's a festival after harvest is finished, because we can't do one in October when we're making wine. It's insane. But we partner with a lot of other local businesses. They come and set up in a tent on the property, free food samples, coffee brewers, soup makers, other alcohol producers like distillers, brewers, all kinds of yummy stuff, cheese, meat, right? All these cool Vermont things we make. And we raise funds for the local food shelf. It's no ticket. It's a donation of money or food for the food shelf. That's it. Thank you. That's Ken, my amazing boss. And that's CJ, one of the wine growers, and all 4 of them, Ethan, CJ, Josh, and Tyler. Thank you, guys.
Wow, and that was 5 minutes early. So we have time for questions. Who would like to ask Kate anything? Oh, okay, we have a remote question.
Thank you. Do you cross promote with other wineries?
Great question. Yes. So Yes and no, actually. There was a Vermont wine trail, which was really interesting to hear the previous presentation in this room about agritourism associations and starting those up. And many of them are like supporting agritourism trails, specifically for particular products that are important in their state. The Vermont Wine Trail has kind of gone defunct. Some people will still ask about it, but it needs leadership, right? But through that wine trail, we would say, oh, you're doing the wine trail. Where are you going next? Where have you been? There's a Charlotte Village winery just down the street from us. So people often will come from there to us, or we'll say, where are you heading next? They're like, oh, we want to go to other wineries. Where else should we go? Of course, we'll direct them there. Up to Snow Farm in the islands, about 45 minutes north. And we talk about how wonderful they are. And they are, you know, Ken has known all of those other winemakers for as long as he's been in business. Some of them have been around 20 years, like close to what we have. Some of them are very new and emerging wine growers in Vermont, which is, we're mentors to many of those folks too, right? And yeah, I absolutely talk. Anytime I'm speaking with someone who gets really interested in Vermont wine growing, I'm like, have you tried Deirdre Heakin's wines at La Garagista, David Keck at the former Boyden Valley? Yeah, absolutely. We're cross-promoting by educating customers about other Vermont wineries. Yeah, we're not afraid to send them business, right? We have sheep in the vineyard too. People love the sheep. They're not there all the time. A mobile shepherd brings them in on his truck, and they can't be there when the grapes are on the vine, or they'll eat them all.
Questions from the room?
Have you ever done any online tastings, like especially during COVID?
I did, yeah. I didn't offer it as like a regular public thing that you could just sign up for, but I did it for groups of individuals who reached out and wanted to do that. So I would ship them the wine after discussing what they wanted to get, and even some like cheese and meat and stuff like that. And so it was like a virtual private educational tasting. I did it for a couple of corporate groups that needed something for their remote teams to do. So it wasn't a huge source of revenue, but it definitely helped. I haven't continued to do that. It's not been something I feel like we have the bandwidth to do, and there's less demand now. Good question.
Do we have another question from anybody remotely?
Yeah, just
Okay.
Exciting.
the wine trail idea is a good idea. Why did it stop?
Oh, lack of leadership. I would say nobody has time to do these things if it's not their job and they're not getting paid to do it. Right. Yeah. Just kind of like petered out.
Do most of your visitors come locally or from out of the area?
It varies throughout the year because we are, on a major thoroughfare towards Burlington. We have tourists coming by from like May to October. Foliage season is huge. July is actually usually typically our busiest month with people taking summer vacations in Vermont, but then the foliage season stays really, really busy too. Of course, we still have lots of local folks, especially the wine club members. And then during the slower months, the amount of tourism that we get, it's not like Vermont tourism, goes south in the winter, but folks who are coming up to Vermont in the winter are typically, many of them are looking to go to the ski resorts. We're pretty far from the nearest ski resorts, not really something that people are like, oh, we're in Stowe or Killington or Jay Peak up in the way northern part of the state. We should go to a winery that's 2 hours away, We do still get tourists. I would like to see us do more active marketing to try and get more of those folks, because like Burlington is a destination, right? We're 20 minutes away. It's not that far. But our visitorship does drop off in terms of the tourists in the winter. And so we rely much more on the locals. Part of why we do the cellar tasting, we bring in the wine club members for, I didn't mention this, but I'll do like a release party. So the January wine club pickup, you come by and meet your other local members who are part of the club, have some free cheese and crackers, that kind of thing, hang out at the winery for an evening.
Questions here?
I assume the sheep are for mowing purposes?
Absolutely, and fertilizing.
Fertilizing. And how about pest control?
So we follow 2 out of our 4 vineyards. The program that we use to manage that is what's called IPM, Integrated Pest Management. It was developed at UCornell I believe. I maybe, if I'm misstating that, anyone from Cornell tell me that, but that's my understanding from the wine growers. And essentially it's about maximizing vineyard health, meaning that the vines over time, if your soil is healthy and your vines are vigorous, they're going to be more resistant to the negative effects of pests. And so Japanese beetles are definitely a big concern for us, and they defoliate a lot of our vines. There's not a ton we can do about that without spraying heavy duty pesticides, which we don't do. So we've adjusted to the fact that they are there. Specifically the beetles, it's when we prune nowadays, we cut back a little bit less than we used to. The hybrid grape varieties are very, very vigorous, and you have to like really prune them pretty hard to not have too much foliage that's going to like shade your clusters of grapes and be too dense, and you'll have too much moisture and you'll have mildew and mold and black rot and unsexy things. But if we do a little less of a hard prune, we've learned the bugs, the beetles, are going to do some defoliation and turn those leaves into like little skeletons and basically do some leaf pulling for us. So if we leave a bit more, they're going to take some as their food, but it's okay because there's still enough on the vine because we didn't prune so hard. That makes sense. They're workers, exactly. Little beetles for us, yeah. Other pests for us are fruit flies in the winery. It's not too bad. We have, raccoons. Raccoons are actually a growing problem. And we're not shooting them, but have-a-heart traps do not work. So we've installed electric fencing around a number of our vineyards. That's somewhat effective. We do netting against birds. We use squawk boxes, which are recordings of birds in distress. We put those out as speakers that are out in the vineyards at harvest time. Freaks the customers out, but you get to tell them why it's like rah! Out in the vines. So those help to some extent as well. We don't have too much of a problem with deer. Some vineyards around here, they do have a pretty big deer problem. We don't so much. Yeah. Voles can also be a major issue. Get a dog if you have voles in your vineyard.
Do we have more questions? Okay, one more in here and then we'll go online again.
Just curious, do you make a paquette?
Yeah, so yes, I'll just explain what a piquette is really quick. So when you make wine, you have your grape clusters you've harvested, you destem. Typically, there are some whole cluster wines that we make one, but most of the time you destem the grapes, then you crush the grapes. You have some skins. In the case of red wine, you're going to leave the skins and the seeds in with the juice during fermentation. With white wines, typically, except for skin contact or orange wines, which some of you might be familiar with, you're basically composting those skins. You're discarding them. We've sold some to like local cideries who want to do a skin fermented cider, but we have a lot of skins if we want to use them. So a piquette is a second use of those grape skins. It's a traditional beverage made in France. It has been for many hundreds of years. That's why the word piquette is French. And it's a drink that they would give to the farmhands, the folks who helped out during harvest as partially sometimes their pay, or to just like make the day go faster in the vineyard. And it's a low alcohol product. You take the skins, they still have a lot of good stuff going on, especially with our destemming and crushing techniques. The press isn't over extracting the good stuff from the skins, and the wild yeast are still on them and all that. So you take the skins, you add 50% water by volume, good Shelburne tap water is fine. And you let that ferment, and then you press that off, and sometimes it's sparkling, not always. Depends on the technique you're using, but it's usually 5 to 8 or 9% maximum ABV. And it's a cheaper product, right? We're using something that we would have just composted for the most part. And we can still sell a bottle of $7.50 for like $16. Yeah, it's not everybody's favorite wine, I'll say, surprising to many people, but you serve it chilled in the summertime. It's kind of like, oh my God, this is delicious. People are seeking out lower alcohol or alcohol-free options more and more. It's a trend that has exploded in terms of what I'm hearing personally in the tasting room just in the past 3 months. We're not going to de-alcoholize our wine. I will stand on that right now. You come back in 5 years and we're making an alcohol-free wine from our own grapes, I'd be super surprised. And I do want to bring in more alcohol-free or low ABV Vermont products for people as an option. Yeah.
Thank you. We
Yeah.
have a question from a remote person.
Yeah, there are two questions online. So the first one is, have you ever collaborated with African partners?
No, is the short answer.
Yeah, okay. And the second one is, have you seen more families coming out?
Just another note quickly on my short answer there about African partnerships. I will say I'd love to go to any part of South Africa. I love Chenin Blanc. So if you're on the line and that's where you are, let me know. So families, we've always been very much like Ken and Gail when they founded Shelburne Vineyard, and so we didn't have a tasting room until 2008. They invested a lot in that building. That's a couple $1 million, that tasting room. The winery portion was open in 2006, and then the tasting room in 2008. They're heavily involved in the community as leaders of various organizations. They live in Shelburne. And so they always encouraged families. We've always had concerts that are kid friendly. People will call and say, like, can I bring my underage child or my baby to the wine tasting, to the vineyard? I'm like, of course you can. I'm going to ID them, but sure. We allow dogs, which is, I don't know if you guys have noticed, it's more and more of a thing people want to bring or ask if we're dog friendly. We ask that they be on a leash, that they're well behaved, people clean up after them, and we can ask them to take their dog off the premises if there are other dogs and there's maybe not great interactions going on, barking. But that encourages families, I think, as well, and other just travelers who are traveling with their dogs, because we're a place they can come.
Thank you. Questions? Yes.
I had a question about education, the educational tours. How much do you go into, like, antioxidants and nutritional value of wine and things like that?
Yeah, really good question. I would say not a ton as part of the basic script. But I definitely make sure that my staff has information so they can answer questions about, like, how much sulfur do you add? What, like sulfites, sulfur, same thing. I'm allergic to sulfur. Do you make sulfur-free wines? And I want them to really know the answer to that, about the sulfites are naturally occurring in all wine. It's not impossible to remove it, but you have to really mess with your wine through reverse osmosis or heating of the wine to remove sulfur. It's not cool to the wine. If you've ever had an apricot or a glass of orange juice, you've had more sulfur than it is in any of our wine bottles. We use very, very low doses, 25 to 40 parts per million. The max allowable by the FDA in the US is like 150. Doesn't sound like a huge difference, but it's like a logarithmic scale. So we'll educate people, like, if you think you have a sulfur allergy, many people are convinced they do, try some of our white wines. If you don't have a reaction to that wine, you don't get a headache or a flush, it's maybe that you are actually sensitive to you're getting a histamine and an allergic response to tannins in red wines, which is more common, I think. So yeah, I guess that's where I kind of go with, like, in terms of nutritional information, is more about people's concerns about the negative effects of some of the additives that can be in wine. We definitely have a very much like nothing added, nothing taken away approach to winemaking. People are just learning why that's important. I feel very strongly, like I talk to people about why barefoot is not wine. It's nasty sugar juice. Don't drink it. It's poison. I mean, all alcohol is poison. If you get a headache, you're probably just drinking too much, right? But yeah.
More questions? Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to hear a little bit more about your wine club, because, during the dead season in winter, I think it's a very, very great thing to increase your revenues. How do you manage like to send, because I think you send quarterly, like every 3 months?
Yes, every 3 months,
Okay.
4 times a year. Yeah.
So is it all new products every time, or how do you manage, like, keeping them
With the happy with the wines? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So of course we make wine once a year. So we have vintages, and they age for various periods of time. So there are times of the year when we don't have new wines or new vintages, but often, yes, we do. And so that's another one of the benefits of membership. It's a little bit of a fuzzy one because everybody who comes to the tasting room is going to be able to taste the new vintages. but I do prioritize wine club access to more limited, like one-off special projects. Wine club members get an email about those first. I communicate with them in between the quarterly releases, of course, right? Don't forget to use your 15% discount at the holidays, et cetera. So they get first access to new vintages, new wines, limited wines. And the process, which has really been made easier, we used to use Square for all of our wine club billing, and it was a very manual. It would take me literally 2 full business days to do all the invoicing, complicated, error-prone, very laborious, you know, and manual. Now we use Vino Shipper. We have to pay them a fee, but they've enabled, because of what they do with tax reporting services they provide, we can ship to more states. And they have a wine club management software as part of their platform. So I build the release, the standard selection for the quarter. We also allow substitutions, right? So people love that flexibility, that freedom. They don't like dry wine or they don't like sweet wine. They're not going to want to take the 3 dry wines I put in that quarter's selection. So Vino Shipper, I build the standard selection, send that email out to all of the club members. They can click a button in that email and customize their selection. So they don't want to get 2 bottles of Marquette Reserve and 1 bottle of Buzzy White. They can get 3 bottles of our sweet white, very popular wine called Lakeview instead. That's been very, very popular. We've always allowed customizations, but like I said, it used to be manual and on me to manage via emails with the customers and spreadsheets. Since we started using Vino Shipper, the customization has really taken off. It's now probably 40 to 45% of every quarter's selection people will choose to customize. And often, even if they're 3 bottles, single barrel members, they're getting 4 bottles, 6 bottles, a case of wine, because I don't know why. It's just because it's online and it's easy for them. They don't have to type an email. They just click some buttons and it bills their card. So they have like a window of 4 to 5 days between when I send that initial email, here's the standard selection, describe those wines, and when you have the ability to customize. And then I click a button in Vino Shipper, and it's really scary because I'm like, okay. And then it bills like $23,000 worth of credit cards. And I hope it doesn't go badly. Yeah, it never does. It's been very smooth.
Are there any more remote questions?
I think this gentleman might have had a little follow-up. Oh, he had a follow-up.
Okay, and then this will be the last one, and we have one remote question.
How long did it take for your wine club to be like profitable? Is there a threshold that you were aiming at the beginning?
So I did not start the wine club. I've been there for 3 years. It was started, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. I guess I don't actually know the answer to that question. I would say it immediately is profitable in the sense that, you know, it is that recurring revenue. It's not like there are too many startup costs to starting a wine club. You're going to offer benefits and therefore discounts, and you're losing some revenue there. But right away, if you sign up 10 members, you're selling 3 bottles of wine 4 times a year to those 10 people as a guarantee. And so it's a pretty low barrier to creating it, I would say, in terms of upfront investment. You just have to create some like brochures and determine what your benefits are going to be and put a page up on your website and have a form for sign up. Okay, I guess there are some costs and stuff, but yeah.
Thank you. We're running out of time, but we have one more question from a remote participant.
Yeah, so it's asking about the competition with agritourism or other activities not related to agriculture.
Almost none. We're so blessed. I don't know if this is true in other states, but so Shelburne is this funny town. It's not funny. There are multiple businesses in Shelburne, which is a very small village, basically, named Shelburne something. And they're all very Vermonty businesses. So there's Shelburne Museum, which is a huge destination, beautiful. You should go. It's gorgeous. Farm buildings from all over the state. Massive grounds. They do great concerts. It's literally like a minute and a half from Shelburne Vineyard. We have Shelburne Orchards. There's Shelburne Farms. Oh, I was talking about the farm. Shelburne Museum. I see, even I get them confused. Because they can go to a lot of different fun things within a short distance of each other. I would say we only add to each other's business. It's not really taking away. Maple sap producers, cheese makers. There aren't too many of them super close to us, but we promote other Vermont makers cheeses in our tasting room, and then tell people you should go to Jasper Hill, you should go visit these other sellers, you should buy more of their cheeses at the shops in Burlington. Yeah, so I would say we feel very much that it is a great community and we support each other. It's not a lot of competition with those other agritourism businesses.
Wow. Well, thank you, Kate.
Thank you, guys.
That was amazing.
Come and have some wine. Come and have some wine with me anytime.
And thank you, everybody. And remember, you can continue the conversation on the website on WOVA. Make sure to check in. You can connect with each other, learn more. And thank you, everybody. Enjoy your tours and the afternoon.